Remember, we start the second session. It will be from 11:05 to 1 p.m. We will take a break of 1 hour at 1 p.m. for you to take lunch. As in the usual arrangement for meeting the public, may I remind you that your remarks and written submissions will not be protected by the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance. And may I remind those attending this meeting and those in the public gallery of the various security measures. The guidelines have been included in the invitation letter by the Secretariat to you, and is also tabled for your information. If need be, you can also ask our security staff for a copy. And may I remind deputations and individuals that in front of you there is an earpiece and microphone. Channel 0 is the floor, Channel 1 Cantonese, Channel 2 English, Channel 3 普通话. If you have written submissions after you have spoken, please put your names on the speaking notes and leave it with our staff when you leave. Members will be given a copy of your speaking notes. Each deputation or individual will have 3 minutes to speak, and after deputations have spoken, we will invite the administration to respond. And depending on the time, we may allow members to ask questions. Present for this meeting, we have Ms. Agnes Wong, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Housing, as well as Mrs. Vicky Kwok, Principal Assistant Secretary for Transport and Housing. Mr. Niza, you go first. Thank you, Chairman.
I am representing Tokawan Ikta Housing Concern Group. We are ethnic minority, short in EM, living in Hong Kong. We usually have more than 4 household members. We encounter various difficulties upon housing issues. The following are our main concerns. Monthly households' income of EM is lower than the poverty line. We spend half of our income on rent. Most of the EM families have one breadwinner only, and they even need to have 2 jobs to sustain their daily lives. Because the income of one job is not enough for our daily lives and to pay the rent, so that's why many EM are doing more than 2 jobs. So we would like to request the government to review the tenancy ordinance, keep the rent within a reasonable and affordable level. Second, most of our EM families have more than 4 household members. Firstly, when we face evacuation in 1 month termination period, it is hard for us to find a new flat immediately. We also need to consider the schooling of children, social network, and job arrangements. This is more like a family crisis for us. Secondly, it costs us extra money when moving out all the household materials, for example, furniture and other household things, as many old buildings do not have the elevator facility. Government always said that there are many houses on rent, but usually that all houses are expensive and only rich people can afford it. We would like to request the government to review the tenancy control and extend the termination period of evacuation by both sides, the landlord and the tenants. We also request that the tenancy agreement should be at least of 3 years. Because the government said people can get public house in 3 years, so at least the tenants can live in a private house safely for 3 years. Ethnic minority groups face language barriers, especially in housing issues. We do not have easy access to the information in property agents, as most of them provide the Chinese version only, including the tenancy agreement. Most of the EM do not understand Chinese or any other language that they can communicate with the local people. And when they are signing the agreement, they don't know what it is saying. And that's why later on, many problems created. Only that they sign agreement that they don't understand. We would like to request the government to provide some culture sensitivity training to the property agents or implement interpretation service in each state agency. Thank you.
好，多謝你啊。
Thank you, Mr. Nisa. Next, Mr. So Chi Hong. Mr. So. Thank you. Well, we're given a bundle of review documents from the administration. I think they have mainly got the information from RNVD, CNSD, business facilitation units and so forth. Now, our property agencies will not be eager to serve us because the business is too small, and many of these agencies are very, very small businesses. So where can they have access to such information? They have got information not representing the market, serving grassroots tenants. So the statistics have nothing to do with us. I'd like to ask the Census and Statistics Department who will fill out CR 109 for SDU tenants. If no one will fill out a CS 109 for you, how can you get economic statistics from us? And I don't understand what is the business facilitation unit. I won't comment on their information. So the survey, can it be accurate since it has excluded information from us? In 2002, when tenancy control was removed, Michael Soon promised a review in 3 years' time, but that was never done. So I urged the administration to reintroduce tenancy control and review it after 3 years. According to administration, tenancy control would disrupt our tenancy market. But in fact, this is a unilateral market being dominated by landlords. How can you call it fair? How can you really disrupt the market? Tenancy control is not about waiving our rent. We're not asking for no rent increases. We just want us to be treated fairly because what we face is a reasonable and totally uncontrolled tenancy market. Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Lam Xiaoping. Thank you, Chairman. I represent the concerned group for SDUs in Kwun Tong. I don't know whether you have ever moved 3 times in 3 years. Once every year. Do you know how much it has cost us? For adults, well, we may adjust our jobs, but what about schooling for our children? What is the impact on our children? And we have to pay a down payment and pay removal cost. Do you know how much that is? When we want to live in cheaper flats, we have to live on the 9th floor without a lift. For each piece of furniture, the removal cost is $50. Do you know how much it costs us for moving flat? Yes, people charge us $50 per piece of furniture when it comes to moving. So you consider all the items you have in a flat, and you know how much does it cost you. Some of us cannot afford removal companies, so we do it ourselves. So sometimes we lose our jobs, and we have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on moving. So we have to take out loans to pay down payment, so or a deposit. So our rent eats up half of our income. Some have been waiting for 6 years for PRH. Some of us are getting desperate. So usually the tenancy is 1 year. The tenure is 1 year plus 1 year for renewal. But sometimes we are asked to go after 1 year. We have to worry about being evicted and rent increase after 1 year. grassroots tenants can only live in illegal structures or as small as 60 square feet SDUs. Rents are so high everywhere, we have no more choice left. What measures does the administration have? Can you say relax or prolong the notice period for eviction? And can SDUs in industrial units be legalized? In fact, you cannot be allocated a PRH unit in 3 years' time. Your time is up. Thank you. Ms. Chen Ka-wai. Thank you. In Hong Kong, we have over 445,000 households living in rented accommodation. 32% of them are eligible for PRH as far as the income goes. But according to the Audit Commission, about 30% of the PRH waiting list have been waiting for over 3 years. Although the administration has enhanced the rent subsidy for CSSA recipients living in private accommodation, many of them have to pay more than the rent subsidy for accommodation. So the government's policy for helping low-income families is inadequate, and these families are forced to put up with expensive rents in the private market. In 2011, the ratio of median rent in private premises and income has exceeded 30,000, or has exceeded 30%. Rents in the market are very high. Because of structural problems in the market, high vacancy rate in the private market, high inflation, and speculation in the property market. When it comes to tenancy control, the government will use examples of overseas, saying that landlords would rather leave their flats vacant than to let them out. But looking at past statistics, during the time when we had tenancy control, the effect on property prices was limited. After relaxation of rent control, we saw steep increases in rent. In 2004, tenancy control was fully done away with because of the economic situation there. And I'd also considered the bargaining power of tenants. Now it is 2014. The government, on the one hand, claims that there will be increased supply in PRH. In the interim, will it introduce tenancy control measures? Thank you. Mr. Tang Koi-kin. Thank you. To address the housing problems of grassroots because of high rents, tenancy control is a pressing matter. As a Christian organization, we believe that the government should take up its responsibility to help the grassroots. Grassroots are the most vulnerable in society. The government has overlooked the needs of the grassroots. It only talked about long-term housing strategy. This is very cold-blooded. Tenancy control will address the plight faced by grassroots. First, the rent increase per year should be capped at 5% at most. And a rent should be capped at a reasonable level. And should the landlord evict a tenant, then there must be justifiable causes. Racial discrimination is certainly not one. And at least 6 months to 1 year should be given as notice of eviction, and we should stop landlords from charging miscellaneous fees, which is rent in disguise. The administration claims that tenancy control cannot suppress rents. We beg to differ.
The report only look at the economic theory and the experience in other countries and asserts that tenancy control is ineffective. This is just a bias, because tenancy control must tie in with other complementary measures. If the tenancy control is ineffective, it may be due to the ineffective measures taken at the same time. So we should not just look at tenancy control alone. There should be a series of measures to genuinely help the grassroots. So we have to introduce other policies. For example, the anti-property speculation measures, and also to make rental property more affordable, and also to increase the ratio of PRH in the overall housing supply, and to give an allowance, a rent allowance, to the families on the PRH waiting list. The report also refers to the risk of creating rogue tenants, but we should avoid doing this just because of the possible side effect. And all policies have side effects. The government should not put up excuses. It should try to find real solutions. Miss Yang Wing-chi, I'm from Land Justice League. The government has been advocating very worn-out arguments against tenancy control. First, it said that the rent will go up if we have tenancy control, and the landlord will be less inclined to offer their properties for rent. If the landlord regards his properties as a long-term investment, then there's no reason why with a tenancy control system they would just left their flats vacant instead of leasing them out for rent. And also the argument is based on a free market, but in the housing market, in the property market, we have a lot of government interventions. For example, we have a oligopoly in the property sector. We allow landlords to buy a lot of flats in the same location, and the rental market there will be monopolized by that one big landlord. There are many reasons why we do not have a lot of appropriate housing for people to rent. We want to have a tenancy control system aimed at tenancy security and protection. And there should be other housing policies to tie in. The administration and the so-called mainstream economists would say that the tenancy control would mean that we are going to see rogue tenants, because the tenants will have a big bargaining power. I think a tenancy control system should balance the interests of the landlord and the tenant. Rogue tenants are not created because of tenancy control. We have to look at the organizations' powers in mediation and arbitration. When the former tenancy control system was abolished in 2004, we have not seen a decrease in the so-called rogue tenants. If a tenancy control would increase initial rent for new tenancy agreements, and the landlord is said will be more choosy, I think you are reversing the order of the relationship. Now the landlord can evict the tenant without giving any reason, and they can evict the tenant very easily. I think we want to make sure that the tenant's right is also protected. And we have to give more thought to why we allow landlords to hoard properties. For those who arrived late, I have to tell you that time management is tight today, so you have to stop when your speaking time is up. You have to stop when when the time limit is reached. If you want to add anything, you can supplement your submissions in writing. Mr. Lam Yong K. Well, I am from a concerned group saying that the government ignores us. We are suffering. The tenancy control was abolished 10 years ago. The grassroots have been suffering. Rent has been increasing. You can only rent a few dozen square feet by paying $4,000. And the living conditions are poor, and they pay high electricity tariff rates. Many tenants are paying $1.50 per unit, and the government just ignores this situation. Whether we're talking about illegal guest houses or SDUs, the government just ignores the problem, and many tenants are suffering from such ignorance, such neglect of the interest. There's no rent control. The government allows people to speculate in real property. The landlord can own many flats, and they would subdivide the flats into SDUs, and the tenants have to live in smaller and smaller units. And ultimately, the tenant has no bargaining power because of the absence of tenancy control. They can be evicted at short notice, and they don't have sufficient time to look for alternative accommodation. So that the units they live in have many problems, such as water seepage and air conditioning breakdown, because they would not have sufficient time to shop around. There is statutory protection in terms of employer-employee relationship, but there's no such protection for the relationship, the landlord-tenant relationship. The administration allows people to speculate in property. The government should address the needs of tenants, especially the grassroots. It's the government's responsibility. And while the government only construct very few PRH units, that's why the government has all the more responsibility to introduce tenancy control. Of course, the government can tell you many excuses. We'd like the government to consult the public over this ASAP. Ms. Ling Xiaoping, I have a son who rents a SDU. The rent was $3,500 last year. This year, it's $5,000. So the rent keeps going up since there's no tenancy control. What should we do? It's a family of 3. There's only one breadwinner, and also you have to consider utilities. We should have tenancy control. The government should do it. And what else? I can't really remember. Well, please tell us if you can remember what you want to say. Well, the couple argues a lot. The unit is so small. They have to fight for everything, the use of the washroom, and so on and so forth. What can we do? The government should construct more public rental housing units. living in an SDU gives you a lot of trouble. The air conditioner is not functioning. The landlord doesn't want to fix it. And the kid is 8-year-old. And he can't even have a table layout to study. Why does the government keep so much land? The government has got land for sale, but there isn't sufficient land for public rental housing. You have no land for PRH. It's difficult to accept it. And the couple is arguing all the time. It can easily lead to family disputes. And they have talked about a divorce. All right, I'll stop here. Madam Ko Lau Chan, I'm from a concerned group of grassroots people in Eastern District. Well, in the rent I used to pay was $5,000. Now it's going to be increased to $6,000. I've been waiting for a PRH unit for 8 years, and I've moved 4 times in the 8 years. And every time we had to pay higher and higher rent for smaller and smaller unit. We have 4 people, and it's just 200 square feet. My elder daughter is 20 years old. The younger one, 8 years old. We've only got 2 beds, no privacy at all. How can one be happy in such a situation? We've been waiting for 8 years. The government has told us that we will be given a PRH unit in 3 years, and we have waited a number of 3-year periods already. So my husband has opted to work overnight. Otherwise, we don't know how we can live there. So we have to sort of live there in rotation. One work for the day shift, the other for the night shift. There are many cockroaches and pests. The air is not well ventilated. There's only one window facing the back alley. And we are never happy because the environment is poor, the air quality is poor. My daughter can easily catch a cold, and every consultation with the doctor will cost you $100 to $200. I earn only $8,000, and the rent plus utility bills would amount to $7,000. My husband would earn something like $9,000, and all that go to paying other expenses, and we can save no money at all. We lead a very miserable life. Madam Law Yok Fan, please move the placard to the side. Madam Law. I'm a member of the Eastern District Concern Group on housing. I'm happy to come here. Please speak to the mic. I'm happy to explore the tenancy control with members here. I agree with other deputations that this is a real issue. The government should attach importance to the need of tenancy control. Grassroots people have a low income. They cannot afford to buy, so they can only afford to rent inferior accommodations. I've moved 4 or 5 times, and all the housing units or SDUs are in poor shape. Because there's no tenancy control, we are at the mercy of the landlord. The landlord can increase the rent or evict you anytime he wants. People with low income, like us, or if you are a singleton, you are waiting for PRH, you cannot, you are not supposed to hold high-income jobs, and you can't even afford to buy better food. You can what you can afford is to buy small fish, while people may enjoy a good feast. We pay higher tariff rates for utilities. There are many units in a flat. We have to pay $80 for using the washroom, and the water and electricity bills would amount to $200 a month. The landlord is actually selling us water and electricity. The unit rate is $1.50, and on top we pay high rent. We hope the government would set up some standard rents. It would be best if you have a standard rent on a per square foot basis, and then the landlord will not be interested in creating so many SDUs. The government should properly regulate rent. At the same time, the government should increase the supply of PRH. Sorry, your time is up. Next, we have Madam Ng Suk Ju. Thank you, Chairman. The current period, like the period in 1997, is the time when we have a booming property market. We used to be able to afford 150 square feet at 3,500. You can't even rent a 100 square foot unit now with that rent. In the past, we lived in a unit where the kitchen and the toilet were shared. When people were in a rush to go to work, how can you share the toilets? I would like to have an independent unit, to rent a independent room or unit. And I have searched in the market for 2 months, and 80 square feet cubicle would cost me $3,000 or $4,000. And it's been said that building more PRH units will help. Can you supply the units if you start to build them this year? Well, the promise is to allocate PRH units in 3 years' time. And now, as and the other speaker has said, some have waited for 9 years, like them. We have a government for the property sector, for the real estate sector. It seems that the government is totally controlled by the real estate sector. Isn't this the responsibility of the government? We have so many people living in SDUs. the government has totally ignored people who are grassroots people and their interests. If the government can help people like us, it will be a government for the people.
Okay, next to you, Ms. Lai Yok Wai.
Yes, Chairman, good morning. We have been hearing the words rent control today. And I don't know whether you have been frightened by the word control. This morning, we heard some real estate representatives saying that if there is rent control, rent will actually go up and owners will not be happy to rent out their property, so there will be a chain effect. And then even basic refurbishment and also removal expenses, etc. It seems they are lumping everything together. However, I'd like to ask a question here. What is a home? When we talk about rent control, we are not saying that we do not want to have any rent increases. We are talking about tenancy rights. We just want to find a place we can call home. Why do we have to face so much difficulty? This morning, many Kaifongs have spoken up and they have been subject to rent increases every year and eventually they are evicted. Can they find a home? And some Kaifong says they are very unhappy. Why is Hong Kong relegated to a place where people cannot find a home? We are saying we should not allow owners to increase rent in an unreasonable manner, and at the same time we like to protect the tenancy rights of tenants. We are talking about the notice period and the right to negotiate the rate of increase. In Hong Kong, we always talk about a free economy, saying that there shouldn't be too much interference. But the administration cannot just sit there and not interfere. Just think about this. If you cannot give a home to Hong Kong people, then I would ask what this government is doing. And therefore, we'd like to put forward 3 aspirations. We'd like to have a comprehensive review. Secondly, public consultation. And 3, we hope you can have a timetable as soon as possible so we can discuss together how we look at rent control. And it's not just for the people here to understand rent control. We should take this to the community. We should not be so narrow in our perspective, saying that rent control is bad, and I think you are trying to scaremonger the public. Ms. Yao Pui Shan. Thank you. I'm from SOCO. I'm a community organizer from SOCO. All along, SOCO has been concerned about the livelihood of people in SDU, especially in old tenement buildings in old districts. We'd like to put forward certain proposals on rent control and also reflect the problems we have seen in the community. The housing problem is so serious for grassroots. This is because there is a hefty decrease of supply of PRH and the supply level is still low. In 1998 and also in 2004, we have seen the scrapping of rent control and tenancy rights. Basically, the market is one that is out of control, especially housing for grassroots. They face high rent. They face very poor living conditions. Well, that has been the case for so long. And the government is saying in the long term, we have to plan for land. We have to look for land in order to resolve this housing problem. But long-term measures belong to the long term. We actually are worried that you are not going to achieve these long-term objectives. But what about the short term and medium term? You have to think of relief measures, and you need to actively intervene into the rental market so that you can give some immediate help to this long-standing housing problem. The government says that in 2014, rent has somewhat eased, and tenants can hope to have more bargaining power. But set against the background I pictured, I don't think within like 5 years, tenants' bargaining powers can go up. We can look at the Rating and Valuation Department statistics for present rental. We still see hefty increases. That's a fact. If we look at rent for small flats, the increase is even more frightening. And if you look at SDU, it is subdivided flat, and the rent increase is actually at even a higher rate. The paradox is that grassroots are paying market rent. Why I say that? The RNVD market rent is set on the premise of the area, and the definition is about a flat with independent toilet and independent kitchen. But this is not the case for subdivided units, so those figures do not reflect the situation in SDUs. Your time is up. Mr. Chong Shi Sham, I am 68 years old. I have 2 children, one 12, one 15 years old. In February this year, on the 15th of February, the housing allowance was $4,400 given to me by the government, but I pay $6,300 for a tenement flat, and I have to walk 10 floors to my flat. The owner evicted me, the previous owner. He said I had to move within a month, so I had no choice. I did not have the money to pay the new rent. We had to pay deposit and pay 3 months' rent in advance, and I was forced to rent SDU. But SDU would require also electricity and water deposits. And for this particular unit that I have rented, the deposit would amount to $14,600, and also the broker fee, which is $3,150. I had to fork out $17,000 at one go, so I didn't have it, and I had to borrow money. The social worker had to borrow for a bridging loan for me. And then the owner applied for an injunction order for the bailiff to seal off the unit. The bailiff came to cordon off the unit. That happened in the morning at 11:30 p.m. on the 30th of January. And they posted a notice, and then I had to go to a flyover and live there beneath the flyover. And I was asked what job I had. I said I cannot work. I have to look after my 2 children, and I am on CSSA. I am not in debt, but even if I don't eat, I don't buy clothes, I have to pay rent first. And the owner was still not happy to allow me to rent the unit. The bailiff was a good person. He said to me, "Sorry, your time is up." The one next to you, Mr. Ho Chi Chung. We are the strategy front line to monitor long-term housing. we have submitted a paper, and you can refer to the paper for our detailed views. I'd like to say why we affected by redevelopment would stand out. This is because once there is urban redevelopment, there will be eviction and rent increase, and Kai Fongs would lose their eligibility for rehousing, and when they are evicted and are moved somewhere, they have nowhere to stay. Rent control is useful because without rent control, there is no monitoring on owners, and tenants don't even have a bargaining power. At the court, even if tenants always pay rent on time, they still lose their case. It seems you are penalizing law-abiding tenants. Is that fair? The government has also talked about the downside of rent control. Now I'd like to talk about the upside. In Hong Kong, if rent will come down by a little, there would be better productivity. We always say, first of all, you have to have a home before you can work properly. But if you are continuing to pay high rent for very small accommodation, how can there be productivity? I hope tenants do not have to compete for housing. In Hong Kong, there are 2.7 million vacant flats, but we only need to house 2.4 million households, and there will be 300,000 units that can be used to house grassroots, and people therefore do not necessarily have to live in SDUs. So rent control can prevent a mismatch between supply and demand. And if rents will come down, it will be good for the economy. But the government always says there are technical problems, and they say they don't want to have vacant flats. I like to tell you this will not happen. Owners will buy flats for rent income. Now, why do they want to leave their flats vacant? When they don't do this, it is because they know there is no rent control, and so they would wait for the rents to go up before they rent out their flats, and also they can get a big compensation if there is redevelopment. And also, you can introduce a vacant flat tax in certain countries. If there is hefty increase in rent, that can become a criminal liability. If you look at previous government policies, anti-Northeast and also the XRL, many people opposed, and then the government said there is no perfect policy. How can we resolve all the problems? So I think these are political instead of technical problems. Sorry, your time is up, Mr. Kong Kin Shing. There are 110 deputations in the 3 sessions today. I am a little curious. Is that Mr. Anthony Cheung is so busy that he is not here, or is he not respecting the chairman Legco, or the 109 deputations and individuals? We are 109 deputations and individuals today, but on the opposite side, we only have Ms. Wong, who is the Deputy Secretary for Transport and Housing. Is it that Dr. Anthony Cheung thinks that this is not an important issue, so he doesn't have to come? But actually, this is a day for Kai Fongs and residents to directly express our emotions and views, but the Secretary is not here, and I will just make 3 points. Number 1, rent control is about tenancy right. It is respect for tenants. If Hong Kong thinks that poor people do not have to be respected and only rich and those who own property should be respected, then we would ask, what kind of society is this? Is it that those who are rich can call all the shots? But this is not a matter of money. This is about respecting the tenants. Therefore, rent control is about a right, tenancy right, and respect for tenants. This is not an issue to be discussed on the moral level. And number 2, rent control will help ease the biggest problem, which is housing. Previously, the housing strategy only provided 2 choices. 1, to buy in the private market, or you become a government's tenant. But the government has not thought about the third way, and that is to develop a rental market. Rent control is not some kind of restriction. It is a way to develop an effective rental market so Hong Kong citizens can have fair treatment and respect in the private rental market. Rent is high not because of rent control, but because some people speculate on flats. They invest and then they speculate on the flats. If these people do not speculate so much, it's just that their profit will be a little less. But then we need to rent accommodation, or else we would have to sleep in the streets. It is not that we want to occupy Central, but then people may be forced to live in or sleep on the streets because they are too poor and cannot afford the rent. And in the end, there will be so many people in Central. You say this is a double-edged sword. But why? Lastly, I hope, sorry, your time is up. I hope there will be a rent control again. I'm from Tin Shui Wai. I'd like to tell you my actual experience. I'd like to talk about my friend. When they lived in Yuen Long, they rented accommodation. They're a family of 3. They may have been giving $7,000, $8,000 for a flat a few years ago, but now they have to pay much higher rent, and yet they have been chased out a year after the tenancy, and they need to live in Sham Shui Po, and that flat would cost $8,000 already, and if they have to pay half the household income for rent, how do you expect them to live? Of course, they are waiting for PRH, but they have been waiting for 3 years without having been allocated a flat. If the owner still wants to evict them, where do you think this family can go? If they forgo their dignity and they live in the streets, there are cobblestones, and the benches are also not provided for sleeping. And do you want them to jump from a height and commit suicide? That is why we have so many psychological or psychiatric patients in Hong Kong. It is because you have forced them on a road of no return. Rent control is a kind of relief. If you don't do it, you are pushing these people to the edge of the cliff. I hope you will reintroduce rent control very soon. I'm also a member of the Anti-West Resources Concern Group. In Tin Shui Wai, there are very few private clinics. We have a small quota for private medical services. Please come back to rent control. You should not go into the medical side. Well, I'm just saying that there are few private clinics, and one also had to wind up. It is because of the high rental again. Therefore, we should also look at rent control of shop spaces. In Tin Shui Wai, you can only choose McDonald's or Cafe de Coral or Ngan Nong Hong Kong style cafeteria. People cannot really choose what to eat. And in just one street, there are 5 jewelry shops. And how come Tin Shui Wai people have to live with all these goldsmith shops? They need doctors. They need food. And then, down my place, there is a stationery shop, but because of high rental, the shop space has become vacant for many years. I hope you will also consider rent control for shops. Mr. Liu Wenhua, I represent the residents in Tsuen Wan who have waited for more than 3 years for PRH. I like to say that the notice period should be extended from 1 month to 2 months. If people are moved out by their owners. And also, we work from hand to mouth. We cannot take leave from work too easily, so there is a need to extend the notice period for moving out. And also the rate increase should be decided upon the inflation rate of the last quarter. Owners are usually misled about the market situation. The estate brokers will be telling them things about the market rent. They may exaggerate the market rent.
So as to find a reference for rent increase, inflation is one of the factors. The government announced the last quarter's inflation rate. I think it is a fair indicator for a fair reference for rent increases. Unless there is consent between the landlord and the tenant with regard to the tenure, or else it should be at least 2 years. Some landlords do not have signed tenancy agreements with tenants, and they can introduce rent increases more than once in a year. So tenants have to put up with up to 30% of increase. To stop this from happening, there should be a fixed tenure of 2 years in tenancies, so as to safeguard the interest of grassroots tenants. Fourth, the unit rent of SDUs should go down to $15 to $20 per square foot. At most, it should be $20 per square foot. Because now it is as high as $40 some as much as $50, $60 per square foot. Things have gone out of control. Further rent increases would only make it more difficult for grassroots families. Your time is up. Ms. Zhong Ching Ha. Thank you. In fact, I represent the Alliance of Tenants in Hong Kong. We've heard the responses from the administration, and they said that tenancy control would make landlords more picky. I don't know how they've arrived at this conclusion. In the past decade, we have a proliferation of SDUs because landlords can increase rents indefinitely. How will they ever leave their units vacant? Well, for PRH, they have a cap for rent increase, but we are also grassroots. How come there is no cap to our rent increases? And we're only given 1 month to move from our flat, and we sometimes receive a lawyer's letter to ask us to go. Well, you announced yesterday that PRH production would be lower this year because of inclement weather, and you have lots of reasons. We have more difficulties. Our difficulties are very real. You can explain away with your excuses. Now, because we do not have tenancy control in Hong Kong, we are bullied in this way. Why do we want tenancy control again? It's not that we won't allow landlords to increase rent. Rather, we are asking for reasonable increase. Before rent control was removed, we were able to rent $4,000. We are able to rent 400 square feet with about $4,000 to house a family of 4. Now, you talk about PRH supply. Are you able to deliver? If not, what can you do to relieve the plight of the grassroots? You have the DSD and also the BSD. You although you say that the property market is a free market, and for formula milk, it is also a free market, and yet you've introduced measures to control the market. We are now forced to a dead end. We've asked for tenancy control for many years. What we want is just affordable rent so that we can have a peaceful family. Thank you. Mr. Feng Chiming. In 2004, tenancy control was introduced. So since then, we face high and high rents and evictions very frequently. Do you know that for some SDUs, the rents have increased by 40%? Now you're able to enjoy air conditioning, and I really feel aggrieved. It's so unjust. Every Wednesday, we came here to petition you. Well, in the morning, if you live in Causeway Bay, you can play Tai Chi in Victoria Park before you return to office. In 2004, what did Michael Yun say? Let me tell you. Miss Emily Lau, you can ask her. Or Miss Emily Lau asked Michael Yun, how come you refused to come every time we wanted to see you? I think the chairman knows as well. In Legislative, I was really angry. He told us that you don't have to fear. There's a safety net, and in 3 years' time you will be allocated a flat. And Anthony Zheng at Hong Kong CSS told me that he could not find it. He could not find it in the record. Perhaps the Secretary of Legislative didn't put it in the minutes, or perhaps the record was deleted. I am really angry. Please do not play tricks again. If you want to play tricks to drive us away, you may as well go home and play Tai Chi. And then the speaker next to me said that our flat is not big enough. Have you finished? Yes. Please do not clap your hands. Please, people in the public gallery, do not do so. Next, Mr. Rashad. Thank you. I'd like to refer to the report. According to the report, when there is tenancy control, then ethnic minorities and the disadvantaged may not be able to rent flats. The government has preconceived stance. Let me tell you, last week I helped a member of the ethnic minority to find a flat. On the phone, we were asked to go and see the flat. And then I told them that the tenants would be two members of ethnic minority. We were told, sorry, no. And then rents would also be higher. So even without tenancy control, ethnic minorities cannot rent flats because landlords have their own stance. Perhaps there is the question of discrimination. Now, we'll talk about tenancy control. Do you know what it is about? It is about controlling the rent. Do you know that for 100 square feet or so, our unit, the rent is $5,000, meaning that the unit rent is over $40 per square foot. You can judge whether it is high or low in Hong Kong. And that the government's role should be referee. Even the middle class cannot afford their own homes. So for the grassroots, they cannot afford rented premises because rents are so high. The government is dividing the community. property developers are the top of the pyramid. And you can, or if you are the middle class, you can buy a flat and rent it out. And the grassroots are the victims. The government claims that the waiting time for PRH is 3 years, but as we all know, this target cannot be attained. So meanwhile, you have to live in rented premises, and there are landlords who hoard flats without renting them out. This will jack up rents. The government and property developers will just threaten people. They will say that tenancy control would affect investment. Both the government and property developers are using the same trick. Thank you.
I'm from Hong Kong Sing Kong Wee Lady MacLeod Center, and I am the community worker who is serving for ethnic minorities. So our mainly job is to providing different kind of the services. But as you know, in Kwai Chung, there is a large number of the ethnic minorities who is from Pakistan. They are living here, especially the families. But we recently found out, it's not recently, I mean last few years, they are suffering from a very high rent. It's just because this is a very, I mean, severe case right now, because the more people, the more families are coming now, and they are facing the same problem. I mean, not only the ethnic minorities, of course, all of the Chinese people who are living in a poverty rate. Because, you know, every year there is an inflation is going on, and it's rapidly going on high and high. But what is the cause? Because if you cannot control the inflation, even though the rent is going higher and higher, so there is no any benefit, I mean, the government is going to give for the families. Because firstly, I would like to discuss about I want to suggest from the government, like if they don't, I mean, control the inflation, they don't control the rent increasing by day. So why they don't allow some kind of the scheme to provide the allowance to the needy persons who can, I mean, accomplish their rent? Because I can give you the example for the ethnic minorities. Even though there is around 5 to 6 members in a family, and one of the head who is doing the job. So how can he can provide the food, provide the shelter, even though most of the tenants, they don't want to give the houses to the ethnic minorities due to the large number of the sizes. So I mean, what they're going to do? They are not Hong Kong citizens. They don't have the right to live in Hong Kong. But why don't you think about in World War II, when most of the people came from the India, Pakistan to help you guys for the right of their, I mean, you can provide more resources. Even though they have consulted to us, they told us that the tenants, they don't want allow us to live there. Maybe they gave us the notice for 2 months or 1 month, because every year they increase the rent. And one person is doing the job and he cannot support their families. And he said if we cannot accomplish his rent, so maybe he can be soon will be, don't allow us to live there. So I mean, my point is that what is the government is doing for them? Is there anything special? And my second point is that I really request, if you cannot, do some kind of the controlment, at least you can have some kind of awareness program for the tenants.
Thank you.
Your time is up. Thank you. Ms. C. Ji-ying. Thank you. The 109 deputations coming today, I think our aspirations are clear. We want a review of the tenancy provisions. It's been 10 years. Michael Soon told us that there will be a review in 3 years' time, but it's been 10 years since. How come the administration or the council has never revived this discussion? All 109 deputations are disappointed that the secretary is not here. we are very concerned about rent control. Why isn't the Secretary here? Many of us are good tenants, and we pay rents punctually, and they also do the basic repair and maintenance themselves. So why doesn't the government want to enhance the buying power of these tenants? Does the government understand the actual difficulties faced by the grassroots? According to the OWL and VD, they only take into account flats smaller than 400 square feet. Now, this morning you've heard many real stories. These tenants have limited bargaining power. They cannot demand the landlord to sign with them a proper agreement. The government claims that the solution is supply, but according to media reports, the government cannot find sites for PRH and for private housing. Now, you don't really have sites. Even if private developers build flats, will they build flats meant for grassroots? Using the Western District as an example, all the buildings or land resumed will be for development of hotels and luxury flats. They are not meant for grassroots. And I think the report is rather lopsided. It talks about the other sides of tenancy control. Even if 1,000 or so deputations come here today, is the administration going to change? Tenancy control is not something rigid. We have all paid a very high cost, a very high social cost for high rents. They should always be taken into account because they are the consequences of no tenancy control. We must review our tenancy control regime. Ms. Lee Mei, I am a victim of I've been evicted by my landlord. Our rent has been increased from $6,000 to $9,000. We cannot afford it. How can we rent our own premises? How can we live peacefully and happily if we do not have shelter? We have to move once every year. Removal cost is high. We have to pay a deposit and also 1 month rent in advance. And we also have to buy new furniture because the old one doesn't fit our new flat. So we're under great pressure. The government keeps saying that this is a free market. In fact, it should interfere because our rents are so high. And the government is introducing measures targeting grassroots, and we are suffering. The government should interfere with the market so that we can have flats to live in. It's been 10 years since the last amendment of the relevant ordinance. Back then, it was said that rents had fallen and there was ample supply of PRH and private housing. But now things are totally different. Property prices have risen. We're waiting for PRH, and you're telling lies. You tell us that there is no land for housing. And yet you have not yet reviewed the relevant ordinance. Well, how many 10 years do we have in a lifetime? We are in hardship. If you do not review the ordinance, well, you have dragged your feet for 10 years. We cannot afford to wait longer. Well, you may be able to wait, but we cannot afford to wait longer. Ms. Lam Oyuk. I'm from the Tenants Alliance of SDUs in the Western District. I'm over 70 years old. I've lived in an SDU for 5 years. At first, I paid $2,300, now $300, and I also have to pay for utilities. I face rent hikes every year. I've no choice because I cannot really bargain with the landlord. They say if I don't want to pay new rent, I have to move.
And the landlord doesn't want to rent to older people. So there's very little choice. Well, I've been paying rent very punctually. There's a shop selling the vegetarian food, and they from time to time would give some food for free, and I'm always there to queue for free food. And there are 5 subdivided units in the building, and I help with cleaning. I've been a very good tenant. I believe that the government should regulate the tenancy market. Yes, we have been promised that there will be PRH in 3 years' time, but now we are told that the units that will be completed in the year will be 9,000 plus, a record low in many years. It's just like the problem with baby formula. The government did intervene in the baby formula market. Why can't you do the same? Why can't the government do the same for the property market? And I've been waiting for PLH for many years. The government keeps talking about increasing the supply, and you auction land, but the land is always for the luxury end of the market, not for people like us. The government is not helping us meeting our housing needs, and it's been doing a poor job. Ms. Wong So-man. I represent organizations who opposed the pro-establishment camp members' participation in the cancellation of the last rent tenancy control system back in those years. I just want to tell you what I think. You may think that it's boring sitting here listening to our difficulties. Maybe there are too few of us. It seems that on the 1st of July, 500,000 people took to the street, and the number is still considered too low. So you just want to do as little as possible so that you would not commit many mistakes. So how much of the suggestions, how many of the suggestions made by us have been considered and taken on board? Well, this black card takes time to complete, and it's not really environmentally friendly. But actually, we just want to get across a few messages. We want to have a timetable for a comprehensive review on tenancy control. There should be a public consultation exercise. If you haven't heard us, please open your eyes and take a good look at our request. We want a timetable immediately. There should be a full consultation. We have been suffering for 10 years after the abolition of the tenancy control. Please don't shout any slogan. I have to stop you. You have to stop. If you continue like this, I'll have to ask you to leave. Please leave. Please leave at once. This one, please. The two over there, you have to go because you have to disrupt the order of this meeting. Please leave at once. The two over there, you have to leave because you have disrupted the proceedings here.
請你出去，唔可以出嚟㗎，請你出去。
Please leave.
而家繼續咧係呢一節最後一位。
The last speaker for this session, we have Ms. Koo, Koo Sai-fung. I've been waiting for public rental housing, PRH, for 5 years. There are 4 of us in my family, and every year I have to pay $500 more in rent. The toilet is always flooded. My children, they're not used the flooded toilet, and we cannot afford to move, and we cannot pay the high rent. If there's no tenancy control, we have to suffer more and more. My husband is a casual worker. His income is unstable. He sometimes would earn $15,000 a month. The rent would be 1/3 of his income, and then we have to pay for the expenses of our children, and everything else. We don't have any saving. We like the government to introduce tenancy control so that grassroots people can be helped, can be provided with a stable housing environment. Thank you. That's the end of the part for deputations to speak. I invite the administration representative to speak. Some members did not have time to ask questions in the last round. I'll give them the opportunity to do so in this session. Ms. Alex Wong, I'll be brief, and I would like to leave more time for members to raise questions. The Secretary is sorry that he cannot be with you today. I'm going to relay your views to him. I won't repeat points already made in the last session, but I need to make a few points in clarification. First, it's not that the government is trying to scare people. We just set out in the report that according to our past experience and overseas experience, there are pros and cons of tenancy control. We just tell the story as it is. And the report is just for the purpose of telling this council that our worries are not unfounded, because something has really happened to other countries. It's said that we have many vacant flats, 2.7 million, according to one speaker. But I don't know where that figure comes from. But according to government statistics, the vacancy rate is 4.1%, and the historical rate was 5%. So it's comparatively low now. It's said that there will not. We're not saying that there will be a lot of vacant flats if we have tenancy control. We just said that happened in the past because some landlords may be reluctant to lease flats, if there's tenancy control, they may use it for other purposes. They may be more choosy about tenants. So in other words, tenants may find it more difficult to get accommodation. We just want to tell you that this might be the case. We're not just raising this as a reason to oppose tenancy control. We want you to know the full facts. It's been said that we have been very slow in constructing public rental housing units, and allocation has been done very slowly. Well, we do have a clear aim to increase the supply of PLH. The Housing Authority is doing a lot to support this, but it takes more than the effort of the Housing Authority, because the relevant parties must also chip in. I'll ask Mr. Leung Yu-chung to speak first, and then Mr. Leung Ko-hong would follow. 5 minutes for your questions and the answers. First of all, I would like to thank the deputations for taking time to let us have their views today. And from what you have told us, we know many real-life instances, and we are not just talking about it as a matter of principle or concepts. You have some very real cases to share with us. For example, the landlord may be choosy as regards who can rent the property. Well, the government is saying that with tenancy control, the landlord can be very choosy, but we are now told that even without tenancy control, the landlord can equally be as choosy. And the landlord doesn't really respect tenancy security. For example, there's no written tenancy agreement. The tenancy period may be very short. And even if there's a tenancy agreement, it doesn't mean a lot when it counts. And also rent has been increasing very rapidly. Say, suddenly the rent can go up from $6,000 to $9,000. It's difficult for the tenants to cope. And also the housing conditions are poor. According to the government, if there is tenancy control, the housing conditions would not be expected. But according to one of you, the toilet is unusable. So you have told us through your own experience that those problems that may be created if we have a tenancy control system are already there. So I would like to tell the administration that these problems have already been created. So are they just excuses for you not to do anything? So what are you going to do with these problems, Ms. Wong? We have heard the deputations that the landlord can be very choosy, and the unit may be out of repair and maintenance. We are saying that with tenancy control, the problems may be even worse. That's not something we want to see. The lack of repair and maintenance is not a problem that can be solved through the introduction of tenancy control. As for being choosy, well, you have to bear in mind that Hong Kong is a free market. The landlord has a right to choose who to rent the property to, unless we say that the landlord is not allowed to do that, or we have a central authority to allocate rental accommodation and to tenants. Well, I'm not saying that we should go for that direction, but we have to consider carefully, and we should not be one-sided in considering the issues. We know that in the private property market, there is a system of mandatory repair and maintenance. If we were to introduce tenancy control, we would not be copying the old system in the past. You keep saying that if there is tenancy control, the problems can be even worse. But what about introducing other laws to help these people? For example, mandating repair and maintenance of older buildings, and also the repair and maintenance of these subdivided units or cubicles. I'm saying that if we are to introduce tenancy control, we're not saying that it should be the only system. There should be other measures. We should review the previous tenancy control system to find the loopholes. How come there were rogue tenants exploiting the tenancy control system, and you should try to find ways and means to resolve or plug those loopholes. Ms. Wong. Well, you can say that the administration can regulate this and that from a conceptual framework. If we mandate a lot of things, then our worry may come to pass, and the landlord might choose not to lease the property for rent. Because whatever we do, we may affect the behavior of the landlord. If we say we draw the line at $8,000 rent, they can easily avoid the regulation by changing the rent a little bit. I think we have to consider this as well. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong. Chairman. Well, Ms. Wong, you are very eloquent. The Secretary is not with us. Well, you say that you are going to convey what we have said here. Of course, you are only going to give him the gist of our views. If what we can do is to convey the gist of the meaning, how can you convey the moving parts of the speeches? A gist is never going to be as good as the full version. You have been just moving around with logic, statistics. It's the job of a university. It's not your job. Are you trained in drama? Can you mimic the sad expressions of the speakers today? There's no need for you to tell us the statistics and the theories. Shouldn't the government be compassionate? And also, shouldn't the government be about upholding justice? Well, why should Jesus came to our world? He could just stay up there. Well, you have to remember that the previous tenancy control was abolished by the government. It's Mr. Michael Soon's 10th measure. It's within your power to build more PRS units. And you say you don't interfere with the market. What about the linked IPO? It's the biggest IPO of this sort. What about the Lehman Brothers incident? Well, you wanted us to give you a blank check and explain in a year's time, and therefore we have the Lehman Brothers incident. The market has failed, and then you say that the government should not intervene. So the stronger party becomes even stronger. And then when the market wants to commit suicide, you would interfere to save them. What kind of administration is this? You are not a university lecturer. I have this question for you. Who did you consult when Michael Soon announced the 9 measures to save the property market? They were announced and they took effect immediately.
Those were measures. What consultation did you undertake before that? What consultation did you undertake on baby formula? How long was that consultation period? What report did you produce, Ms. Wong? You say you will be practical and you will tell the truth. So come on. I asked you these questions. What report did you write? How many consultations did you conduct? Don't play with words. Don't bully these people and don't brush them aside. You must be truthful. Germany used taxation to give benefit to those owners who were willing to rent out their flats. So they were willing to put flats into the market. Can you do that? Can you also charge capital gains tax, progressive profits tax, and also vacant flat tax so that you give money to the conscientious owners, help them with the refurbishment? If they do not cut up their unit into SDU, give them tax concessions, and allow them to use the octopus for special purposes? Come on, think about a basket of means. We talked to you about a basket of means. You said you could not find land to build flats, but then you allowed hotels to be built on land that you found. Are Hong Kong people living in hotels? Which industry are you subsidizing? Which industry are you subsidizing when you put out land for hotels and when you allow residences to be turned into hotels, especially for property owned by churches? Who are you benefiting? Like one in Wan Chai, it charges over $3,000 a night. Come on, you are playing with words. Give me a reply. Ms. Wong, anything to add? Just one word. Land is not my jurisdiction. But land is not only for housing. We also need to develop other industries in Hong Kong. That's my brief response. Okay, that's the first round. As a legislator, I also like to ask certain questions in the first round. I now use my 5 minutes. I'd like to ask the administration. Many deputations said that in the Michael Soon era, well, this is what is said by the deputations. They said that Michael Soon promised a review within 3 years of the removal of rent control. What is the truth? Many deputations have questioned why the administration gave that promise and yet it was not delivered. This is the first. I don't know whether you know this. Even if you did not know about that, could there be a comprehensive review on rent control, also within a certain timetable? I think this is the common thread from many deputations and individuals. Please reply. Just now, some speakers said that Mr. Michael Soon, the then secretary, said that there would be a review within 3 years. I dare not say I read all the literature, but I looked at the enactment of the removal of the rent control ordinance. I read the Hansard, but there was no mention of this. And I also asked my colleagues to check. Our very quick glance did not show that to be the case, but we'll go back and take another look. But that is the situation at present. As to whether there will be a comprehensive review and whether there is a timetable, at the last HP meeting, the secretary mentioned that we are collecting views. And during the LTHS consultation, we had some views as well. We hope that in the by the end of the year, when we release the LTHS, we will also give an account of this. Okay, so first of all, go back and dig up the record and give us a written reply. That is a reply to the HB of LegCo. As you said, Ms. Wong, we'd just like to clarify the facts. We'd like to know whether there was this promise. If really there was the promise and yet you did not do anything, then you would be said to have reneged on your promise. I think you need to clarify that as a fact. Okay, you have to clarify that for the panel. Secondly, you said that by the end of the year, when you finalize the LTHS, you will also release your stance on rent control. I hope deputations and individuals have heard you, that this is your reply. And in the remaining time, I'd like to state my own views. The FTU Social Services Committee has spoken through a representative in the first session, and I will not repeat the views. Personally, I think the administration should conduct a comprehensive review on rent control. 10 years ago when it was removed, and also in the period before that, I think you have overdone the work, because as a matter of fact, the landlord and the tenant should have their interests looked after equally. We need to strike a balance between the interests of the two parties. The landlord and the tenant should enter into an agreement, a contract, vis-à-vis the renting of the accommodation. So we should find some reasonable space for maneuvering. I think we can. If we can have a reasonable system, then both the tenant and the landlord will stand to gain. So it's not a bad thing. From the deputations and individuals speaking today, we can see that after the rent control was removed, there was another situation that has arisen. Say there is no written tenancy, so a lot of problems have arisen. And also the rates of increase and also notice period, tenancy period, etc. This does go to show that when the market has failed, the grassroots who live in SDUs are really in a very difficult situation. I think the administration should face up to this. What is most important is that, please let me finish. I know I have exceeded the time. As the chairman, well, I also allowed you to exceed your time. I also allowed members to exceed their time. So I would hope that you should provide more supply because we need to tackle the root of the problem. I'll stop here. Second round. Leung Yiu-chung and Leung Kwok-hong. Second round. 4 minutes. Leung Yiu-chung, including a reply. Chairman, I think the DS is really an orator. She can really talk. She says with rent control, owners will not put out their flats for renting, but put them to other uses. I'd like to ask you, according to what you know, how will owners make use of their flats if not for renting out? Answer this question. Ms. Wong. I myself am not an owner that rents out flats. But we can imagine that the owners can sell the flats and they use it as a second home, because an owner can live in 2 homes. Mr. Leung, we are not talking about factory buildings. It is illegal to provide SDUs in factory buildings. And you are talking about changing the use. No, I didn't say changing the use. No, sorry. I did not talk about changing the use. What did you say? Let us dig up the record. If you said you did not say changing the use, you also said it was amounting to changing the use. No, I was not talking about from residential to non-residential, but rather making use of the flat by the owner himself. No, I'm not talking about changing the use of the flat from residential to non-residential. I'm just saying that this will be used for their own occupation. No, this is what you said. You did not say that in the first round. Maybe I did not say that clearly because that was not my thought. No, you are not being unclear. You are just playing around with words because you have no answer. These are residential units. How can they be transferred for other kinds of use? They are not factory buildings. Chairman, maybe I did not say that clearly. Let me now clarify. I was not talking about changing the use. I was just saying that it could be for the use of the owner himself or for the owner's relatives. I must apologize if I did not clarify, if I was not clear enough. Okay, let me get some figures. Is it that one person can live in a few houses? So in the interim, some of the houses will become vacant. Is that right? I think you are arguing for the sake of argument. The owner may sell it off, but then it will be owned by another owner who will also put out the flat for renting. Today, I think you have a heart of stone. You have heard that the grassroots are in very poor living conditions, but you have no sympathy for them. You are not talking from your conscience. I know you have to defend the policy. Do you think what you are saying is unfair to these residents? You occupy that position and you are arguing for the sake of argument. Just think about the poor conditions these people face. Just now you said that owners would change the use of their flats, but now you corrected yourself and say that they might sell off the unit or live in a few units at the same time. If that's the case, I ask for figures. Chairman, I need figures. In Hong Kong and also in other countries, what is the situation like? Is it really that when owners do not rent out the units, they use them for self-occupation or they sell off the units? And plus, Chairman, I don't exactly agree that we should have a comprehensive rent control review. I just want them to plug the loopholes of the old rent control scheme. I think that should be the direction to take. So I'm asking you again, will you plug the loopholes of the old system and then reintroduce rent control? Ms. Wong, Chairman, allow me to clarify again. Actually, in our paper, please read the paper in para 18. We have cited an overseas study that is in Massachusetts in U.S. It was found that 10% of the buildings subject to rent control were turned into accommodation or apartments not for renting out. So this might happen, and I'm not saying whether that must be the case today. I'm just saying that in considering the matter, let us not just look at this from one angle. I of course understand the living conditions of the speakers here. It's not that I have not heard them, but today's discussion is not to say whether we are going to do it or not. This is the time for me to listen to your views. If that's the case, we hope the discussion will be rounded so we can give it comprehensive consideration. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, you don't have logic in your administration. Mr. C.Y. Leung is launching the tough measures in order to suppress the exuberance of the property market. You can withdraw them when the market is healthy again. He is not saying the tough measures are going to stay. You have been reviewing the rent control ordinance. But this has to do with our economy and the banking system. Everybody knows that you don't have to resort to oratory skills. You argued with me, saying that we also need land for hotels because we have other industries. But that is not said by Mr. C.Y. Leung. He did not say once he assumed his post, he would build hotels and promote tourism. What is the percentage of contribution to GDP by tourism? Do you know it? You are trying to argue with me. I'm asking you, what is the percentage of our GDP contributed by tourism? Please speak to the chairman. I'm asking you, how much GDP is contributed by the property market, which is basing on internal demand or domestic demand? Let us be specific. A person who cleans dishes in the hotel has to rent an SDU. And when we talk about the economy, we are not just talking about making money. You should not play with words and argue with us. And my question for you is, for the 4% contributed by tourism, you are providing land for hotels, yet you don't know whether more people are coming to Hong Kong. And also you allowed people to rezone the land and turn a building into hotels. And in our GDP, how much is contributed by the property market so that bankers can milk us? Argue, always arguing. If the economy is good, C.Y. Leung will not have to say what he said before he assumed the post. If you are a person with a conscience, you should not just argue with me. You should not remain in the administration. If you have a conscience today, you should leave. Somebody will fill your post. I'm sure when you go to another department, you would say something else. Right? If you work in an NGO, you would have other things to say because you only speak from your position. Many high-ranking officials are now with NGOs and they have become a different person. Be modest, be humble. Don't treat us as if we are idiots and argue with us. Put up a good show and people may be moved. A person who is rational and without emotions can be as stupid as a pig. Even if you can use human languages, you are not necessarily knowledgeable. If you are knowledgeable, you have to solve problems for human beings. Philosophers should interpret the world in different ways with the purpose of liberating the world. This is what Karl Marx said. This is what I want to give you and your secretary, because your secretary does not exactly read Karl Marx. This is the end of my remark. Any reply? Ms. Wong? Any reply? I won't reply because of the time constraint. Last but not least, I like to make use of my second round. I have not finished just now, and I think what is most important is that the administration should concretely increase the supply of PRH. But land supply is a problem. I hope LegCo members and our society should support the administration in increasing land supply. In the last 10 years, there has been a growth lagging behind vis-a-vis supply of land, and since there was not early planning done, land supply is now at a bottleneck. Even if we have a 10-year PRH production program, the flats might not be produced in time. I would appeal to the entire society, including members of LegCo, to be pragmatic. The administration has consulted on LTHS, and we need to tackle the bottleneck of PRH supply at the root. I know people are waiting for long years, and there is a big problem, and we need to increase housing supply. This term of government is willing to draw up an LTHS, and 60% of new housing would be public housing. We hope the administration can record my view. Because of time constraint, I do not need a reply. We'd like to thank the deputations for coming. The second session ends here. The next session starts at 2 p.m. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.